Hello, everyone, fellow aviators, aspiring young aviation professionals in particular, but also parents, teachers, counselors, middle and high school administrators, professors, student advisors, and everyone else watching or listening today. Welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens. Chatting with me today is Gary Anzalone. Did I say that right, Gary?
Correct.
Okay, because I did check with you before. Gary is a board member and co-founder of GLADA, which stands for Global Licensed Aircraft Dealers Association. Gary is also the co-founder and managing partner of Equus Global Aviation. And keeping things all together and on mission for GLADA is Christine Blair, their operating director. She's smiling. Like Gary, Christine has a long history in aviation. So talking with seasoned aviation veterans, we were talking about this earlier, it's great, their wisdom, their experience and everything. But my favorite guests are when I have young aviation professionals in the early stages of ramping up their careers. So let's meet Danielle McCauley. Danielle is a sales executive for Equus Global Aviation. She's also a graduate of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Daytona Beach. And she, of course, is a member of GLADA. And then we also have Mitch Flinn of Flinn Aviation. Mitch is a graduate of Texas A&M. Flinn Aviation was started by his dad, and Mitch made a transition from selling yachts to selling planes, so we're going to have a lot of fun talking with him about that. Guys, welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace.
Thank you.
It's great to have you guys with us. And, I'm actually looking forward to this conversation because I haven't had a show about aircraft sales and the like in a while. So it's really going to be a lot of fun to hear you guys' perspective on it and that type of thing. And I'm going to jump right in it. We're going to be talking about GLADA and a few other things, but what is it about aircraft sales? And any of you can jump in on this. Buying an airplane, selling an airplane, leasing an airplane. What is it that draws you guys to doing this specific aspect of aviation?
Thrill of the hunt.
The thrill of the hunt. Tell us about that thrill of the hunt, Gary.
I just like making deals. Whether it's, from my days in the car business to selling a house and buying a new house, I just like being in the process.
So what got you into aviation specifically?
Myself, I started off in a company that had an automotive division, a yacht division, and an aviation division. And I was in the automotive division. And it's an interesting story, but we had an FBO in Florida, and a client had come in and they were quick turning, getting fuel, and they were walking around the hangars looking at vehicles. And somebody says, it's one of the airplane sales guys. I happened to be at the aviation showroom, and he said, these people are from your hometown. You should go walk them around, show them some cars. And I walked this family around and I was showing them cars. And when they were getting ready to leave, I said to the owner, I said, if you ever want to sell your airplane, call the kid from St. Louis. And this is the short version of the story, but he actually
St. Louis, but go ahead.
He died that evening. And I got a call from his family the following business day. And they said, I forgot the important part of the story. I said, if you're ever going to sell your airplane, call the kid from St. Louis. And he put his arm around me, standing with the wife. And he says, this was the first Citation 5 sold from the factory. I've owned it since new, and I'm going to own it until I die. But if I die, I want you to have it. I said, John, may you live to be 100 years old. And he did. And he flew home and he died that evening. And then the family called on Monday, and we ended up buying the airplane. And the owner of the company gave me the opportunity to transition from the automotive side of the business to the aviation side of the business. That was 30 years ago.
What a story.
Yeah,
and from that point on, huh?
And from that point on, yes.
Yeah. I've been a pilot a long time. I've flown in a lot of different planes as a pilot and as a passenger. And I have to say, selling aircraft, particularly selling business aircraft such as jets and turboprops, et cetera, has to be something that it's comprehensive. There's just a lot to it. It can sometimes sound pretty simple, but the process is pretty involved. Can we talk about that for a minute? You guys tell us your perspective on doing that and the knowledge you have to have of the airplanes in terms of everything from cabin comfort to performance, et cetera, et cetera. Plus you're dealing with pre-owned versus new and all of those kind of things.
Mitch, you want to take that one since you kind of touched on that a little earlier in our chat?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the process is never the same. You know, as we've mentioned, I'm early into the aviation side, but coming from the yacht side, you know, no transaction is the same. And so as long as you know what your product is and ensuring that product is going to be the right fit for your client, then it's just kind of mending the two together and making a puzzle work almost.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Mitch, you grew up in an aviation family, but you went to sell yachts for a while. What drew you back to aviation? And, you know, tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm coming back to aviation to join the family business. You know, I've always wanted to work in the family business. I went to school and I got a business degree in maritime business. And then I got a really good opportunity with a yacht sales company that was essentially too good to say no to. And now that I've created a pretty big business portfolio here, it just kind of worked out to go back to Flinn Aviation now.
I guess there is some kind of crossover between buying yachts and buying jets.
There is, but it is a huge difference. The industries are very different.
Yeah, tell us about that difference.
Yachting is very relaxed. There is there's no regulation in yachting, you know, as far as the actual product. You don't have the FAA that's ensuring that all the boats are being kept up the way that they should be. And so there's a lot more loose things that go on whenever it actually, you know, you're selling the yacht as opposed to an airplane that is stuck to different regulations. Yeah,
that's a really good point because, you know, planes have to go through a lot in order to be certified, et cetera, and approved for sale. And even the challenges that you may have of making sure that a pre-owned aircraft has been properly taken care of and will pass inspections and things like that on pre-buys and things of that nature. Christine, you've been around this business a long time. Share some of your wisdom on that.
35 long years, Vince.
35 long years. And you don't look at
long years. It's surprising as young as I am. I started in 1988. I started as a researcher at JetNet. JetNet is local to me here in upstate New York. GLADA's offices are we're officed out of Austin, Texas, but I'm actually physically located in upstate New York. So I started as a researcher in 88 when JetNet first opened their doors. I had no clue what I was doing. I knew nothing about the aviation industry. And I had a unique opportunity to learn from the people at JetNet that a researcher, when they usually start, there's not a lot of proper formal training. You know, it's kind of like hit the phones and learn as you go. JetNet taught me different processes. So I kind of had a leg up when I went and eventually started working for different brokerage firms throughout my career. I spent about 15 years at JetNet, and then I worked for a few different brokers along the way. I spent a little time at AvPro. I spent some time at Business Aircraft Leasing doing aircraft research and sales support, as well as leasing support. I also worked a little bit at globalair.com doing advertising until the opportunity came up to be.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Nope. And so it was kind of like I finally landed my dream job. I'm working with everybody that I want to work with, and I love the people in this industry, and I love what I do. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about research. What specifically working for JetNet, what kind of research were you pulling together for them?
So when I started out, I was a end user rep, they call it. So the end user reps are responsible. They get a list and they're responsible for calling all of the aircraft owners and finding out what airplanes are for sale and then putting that information into their database. I then got promoted to be a dealer rep. So my job was then contacting all of the people that buy and sell aircraft and maintaining what aircraft they showed available for sale in the database.
Yeah, so for those of you in sales and buying and selling aircraft and leasing aircraft, how does that information help you? How do you use that information?
Market research is everything in this industry. You use it every single day. It's the most important part, I would say.
Yeah.
It tells you everything to know about what aircraft costs, how many were sold in the recent years, where to price them, how many of them are in the US versus international.
So does that tend to help you, particularly with negotiating, when you're starting to get to that point with a potential buyer, in terms of knowing where the industry is in pricing and things like that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that, and also to educate, if you can educate the seller on what his or her aircraft is worth.
Got you. Somebody else was going to jump in there.
I was just going to comment that I have an old story about I was introducing one colleague to another colleague at a trade show, and I referred to the one colleague as a researcher, and she was deeply offended. She'd been in the industry a couple of years and didn't want to be considered as a researcher. And the funny part about it is we're all researchers, every one of us. I still consider myself and pride myself on being a researcher to this day. We are a data-driven industry. And when Christine talks about JetNet and Amstat, which are similar platforms, and if you're in the real estate industry, it would equate to the MLS. And everything that you need to know is in either one of these platforms. But it's not just about knowing about the values. It's also about knowing how to define the flight mission and qualify what is the best aircraft for your prospective buyer. So you've got all of the performance data there. You can do it for specific airplane, different airfields, for short field or high temperatures or cold weather. That's really the research that we have to do to be able to guide the best airplane for your client's flight mission.
So you're talking about fitting the mission of the client, and also on the research side, knowing your client and knowing more about them in terms of what's important to them, what their needs are, et cetera.
That's exactly right. That's the first thing that I train my salespeople to do, is to try to understand what is the flight mission of your client. You have to know that first and foremost, and then you have to know what is the budget. And then you take more of a deductive approach to try and find what is going to be the best make and model for what is their financial capabilities.
Danielle, I can't help but ask you, when you went to Embry-Riddle, did you go there thinking that one day you would be selling aircraft?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because you know how your phone gives you like photo memories?
Yes.
So I had one.
I actually do, by the way. You know how that works. If you had asked me that question a couple months ago, I would have been like, huh?
Got one popped up, right?
So actually, my first MBAA in college was in 2018 at the MBAA in Orlando. And I had a photo pop up of Sherry Cannon's business card when I first met her. And prior to meeting Sherry, I really wasn't thinking about aircraft sales. I knew I wanted to be on the business side of aviation and on the corporate side, just because that's what I grew up knowing. But I met Sherry and kept her contact, and I kind of harassed her for a couple of years, asking for an internship or anything to get to work with her, because I thought she was so inspiring when I met her. And it's actually amazing to me that 5 years later, I am sitting in an office right next to her.
So her mentorship drew you in.
I wish she mentored me, but unfortunately, Sherry Cannon is probably one of the busiest people I know. So didn't have time.
You were in her shadows, but it still inspired you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shadowing's a big part of the business. for the younger generation, because when I talk to other people, seasoned veterans, they really don't have the time to sit and do training in a traditional job. So it really becomes more about sit by, listen, watch, and absorb.
Yeah. To that effect, Mitch, did seeing what your dad was doing on the aviation side help you a lot with what you did? Because you told us what your degree was, and then you came out and started selling yachts. So did that kind of seeing what he was doing and getting input and advice from him, did that help you with your side of the career?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always, and the whole time I've been in this industry, I take advice from every single person that I can, regardless of what level they are in the industry or even what industry they are. Aviation, car sales, realtors, yacht sales. I take advice from everybody and then mold that into what works for me. And so,
Yeah.
to y'all's point earlier, shadowing is one of the biggest things that got me to where I am today. There really is no textbook, to learn how to sell. But if you open yourself up and watch how other people sell, then you can take different aspects from each of them and then create what works for you.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant that you just said that, and it kind of follows along with what Gary was saying earlier in the show about coming from the automotive side, but how all of these things apply, because sales is sales, and how you develop it and how you develop clients, et cetera, and so forth, can really apply to any product or service. But I think that's really great that you've taken it in from a whole bunch of different areas.
You have to, and it's only crazy if it doesn't work. So.
Right.
True.
So this brings me to really one of the areas that we wanted to talk about, and that's talking about GLADA and talking about associations. So you mentioned NBAA, the National Business Aviation Association conventions are very important to the industry and afford the opportunity with the static display and all of the other exhibitors and everything to really, for anybody in the industry to utilize that to their advantage in terms of things that they need to do or accomplish in the industry. In you guys' case, in terms of buying, selling, and leasing, it's a great platform for you to network and go out on the ramp and address clients and things like that. So tell us a little bit, because Gary, you and Christine, you guys apparently got together and formed this organization, the Global Leased Aircraft. Did I say it right?
A little bit bigger group, but yeah, so we were both there with a few other people.
We were a couple of them.
Yeah. Global Licensed Aircraft Dealers Association. Did I do that right?
That is correct.
GLADA. Anyhow, so glad you guys call it GLADA. It just makes it so much easier. But Tell us about the formation of GLADA and what you guys are doing with it. Christine?
Sure. We started 4 years ago in May. It was myself, Gary Anzalone, Billy Meyer at Texas Aero, Guy Adams with Global Jet Aviation, another veteran in the industry, of course, they both are, and Mike Zabkar at US Jet Search. Mike had a long career at Bombardier prior to starting his own company. We all got together and started talking with other people in the industry to see what they might be looking for. Like Gary mentioned in the beginning, something that was more all-inclusive. Some organizations work for some people for different reasons. GLADA was formed so that we could get everybody, big and small, that wanted to be involved in networking and information sharing and give them a platform to do that with. And that's what we've done. It's been 4 years and we've got 117 members. 62 of those are our broker members, and that's anybody whose primary business is buying and selling aircraft. And then 55 of those current members are industry members, and that's anybody that plays a supporting role to the aircraft brokers in this industry. It could be maintenance, paint and interior, finance, anything. We encourage, we don't require anything of our members other than what they want to participate in, but we encourage our industry members to provide discounts and incentives to the broker group. And a lot of them do that, encourages them to work together within the network first. And we've been very successful with that.
Yeah, you brought up something that's really key that I wanted to expand on a little bit. There are different elements, I'll call them, of selling and buying and leasing aircraft. that are really key. You mentioned maintenance and you mentioned, interior and things like that. There's sometimes people that buy a pre-owned aircraft, but they want to change the interior, or they want to upgrade it, or they want to put better connectivity or put connectivity in it and things like that. Can you guys talk about those kind of things and how they affect, what you do in terms of buying and selling aircraft?
Well, they're all very specialized branches of the industry. With GLADA, our community, we have a platform, and on our platform we have different channels. So if you were for maintenance, for example, if you had an aircraft that you needed to get in for maintenance, or you were going to do a pre-purchase inspection, you could go onto the maintenance channel and you could put an announcement, excuse me, and somebody could respond and say, well, we've got an availability for a pre-purchase slot. Same thing with completion centers. There's a finance channel on there. So, finance as an example, there's different structures of finance in our industry. There's your traditional bank financing, there's your leasing, and then it's who's going to take the depreciation, asset-based financing, which is for somebody that doesn't want to release their full financials, but they want to put down a more substantial deposit. So through the GLADA finance channel, we can assist these people to find what is going to be the best structure for what they need, whether it's financing, maintenance, leasing, any of those examples.
Yeah, so you guys work a lot with financing, and you work also with legal, right, in terms of drawing up the deal.
Yeah, if I could answer that, that is another one of the things that we wanted to do when we started GLADA, was that we wanted to have a standardized form of letter of intent and a standardized form of aircraft purchase agreement. There's a lot of pride of authorship in this industry. There's a handful of top law firms that we all know, and they all like to have their fingerprints on the LOI. And it really just, sometimes you find yourself fighting over nuances that probably should be pushed further down to the APA. So we formed a contract committee, and they put together a really nice standard form letter of intent, and it had to evolve when we got into Russia sanctions and things like that. So it's always a evolving template, but that was part of one of the benefits when you get some of these younger brokers that may not have the experience with the LOIs or the APAs. They can actually go into our library and draw from these documents. So it's a very, very huge benefit to the GLADA program.
So Gary, those new to the industry are not familiar, LOI, APAs?
Letter of intent and aircraft purchase agreement.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
For those of us in the industry, we have a habit of using all of the.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's hard enough to keep up with all the avionics, and acronyms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but that brings up my point about, so there are great advantages to an association like GLADA and the other associations in the industry like an NBAA, et cetera, that play a really important role with what you guys do. And I would also think, and this probably touches on for all of you, but I'm going to lean a little bit towards Danielle and Mitch, that the networking aspect of it can be a big piece of it too.
Definitely. And GLADA provides a space where we all get to know each other better and build trust, which is really important in this industry. And we use the platform Slack. So one of the channels that's on there is aircrafts coming to market, just for an example. And we get to have a first look at aircraft before they're brought to market, which is, it's huge for us. But also having events like at NBAA, where we have a social event where we can all get together at least once a year to just build on relationships, especially for us younger people who obviously, we haven't been in the industry for a very long time, but getting together is important to build those relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. And using a platform like GLADA it helps eliminate some of the awkwardness because you already have something that you share in common.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you guys were talking a little bit before we went live about a new program that you're in the early stages of putting together for young professionals. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Danielle.
So yeah, we are wanting to start a GLADA young professionals group. So typically it's going to be young professionals under 40, just as a way for us to get together. We're still in the very early stages of it, but we want to do something at least once a year to get together. So I think we agreed on 2 in-person social events, but it's not only a social group, it's going to be for educational purposes as well, and to also help us expand our relationships with, people our age that are getting into the industry.
Yeah, and it can just be used as another platform and another resource to bring people like Danielle and myself who are new to the industry, another resource to have in our books.
Yeah, Gary and Christine, as you guys know, my show is all about letting young people know of the opportunities in the industry. I say young people because it can be anywhere from a middle schooler and up, but interestingly enough, a lot of people that have already finished their degree in school, may even be getting an advanced degree or are done with that too, are still sometimes trying to figure out what they want to do, because maybe they were going to be on the professional pilot track and that changed for one reason or another, or things of that nature. Share your perspectives of both of you having been in the industry for a long time in terms of things that you think young people ought to be aware of, particularly for career in the buying, selling, and leasing of aircraft. Ladies first.
Oh, thanks, Gare. It's one of the over 40 crowd in the aviation industry.
41.
Yes, just 41. Thank you, Vince. I've seen the industry change quite a bit since I've gotten my start back in the late 80s. There's so many different aspects, so many different parts of the industry that people can get involved in. And part of what I wanted to do, and we've set up an education committee within GLADA, is making sure that the younger generation is aware of the various roles, places that they can have a career in business aviation. It's not just aircraft sales and pilots and mechanics. It is title and escrow, it's finance, it's leasing, it's everything that you can think of for any other asset industry, like Mitch said, would apply to the business aviation industry. But usually people learn from somebody in their family or a close friend that's already involved in it. Otherwise, there's really nothing out there to show these people the different areas that are available and how they get the training for it. And a lot of them don't require you to go to college. So the GLADA Education Committee to me is important because it will let us teach the people that want to be in this industry what they can get involved in, and then help them through the process of getting the training that they need for those roles.
Sure. Gary?
Yeah, I think Christine answered it very well. There's not a set path to get into this industry. It requires a little bit of luck.
Tell us about it.
I would definitely encourage somebody to consider being a pilot as a foundation. There are many, many aircraft brokers that are also pilots, or they were mechanics and came over from any other aspect of the industry. And our industry is starved for young talent in all of these forms. I would, my advice to somebody that's wanting to get into the industry, if you're not going through a university like Embry-Riddle or University of Arkansas or some of these Purdue or some of these other universities that do have an aerospace program, it's really no different than selling. You start by selling yourself. You go to your local FBO and you find out who's got the sales offices in there, and you walk in and say, what can I do? Can I empty your trash? Can I sweep your floors? Can I shadow you? And you've got to sell yourself before you start selling airplanes. But that's really what you have to do. I would also, advise, young aspiring aircraft salespeople that you have to understand that it's you create your own luck. You have to really be committed to learning everything that you can about the industry. When you're when you're not taking sales calls, you need to be studying the makes and models. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's worth it in the end.
You know, I think that's a great point that you bring up. I wanted to expand on a little bit because you both have brought up about education. There are different levels of education that you can have in this industry, from going to the aviation centric 4-year, you know, like a UND and a Purdue, et cetera, and so forth, SIU, Carbondale, Middle Tennessee, and I could go on and on with them. But there are also 2-year programs that are just as effective in terms of depending on what you want to do in your career, that can apply too. And there are 2-year programs all over the country. So pretty much probably where anybody lives, they would be able to do that. The interesting thing about sales is that it's not something that's generally in the curriculum of a lot of these schools. We were talking about that earlier. It's something we'd probably like to see more of. It may be a course within a business degree or something like that, but not a full-on course about selling and things like that, in terms of that going towards a degree and things like that. And since we touched on it before, I'll put you guys on the spot in a little bit and say, do you think that should change?
I do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I met with a community college in the SUNY system here in New York about starting a program. And it's a conversation I'm going to continue to have with them. They look at it more as not part of a degree program, but more as a continuing ed program, which I'm all right with. So they've got a school, it's Mohawk Valley Community College has a school for A&P mechanics. Well, an A&P mechanic may say, hey, you know, you're offering an aircraft sales course that I can take online. This is great for me. This may be something I can add to my portfolio and just be that much more diversified in this industry. I think there's a place for it. I absolutely do. How we're going to get there, I don't know yet, but I definitely see it happening. We need to, there's books out there. I've seen a few that have been written recently. You can read a book, but there's nothing about, I took the real estate license here in New York, which is no fun task. And I did everything online. There's no reason why you can't have a format online that teaches you what you need to go to do for the process, and then learn as you go if you're working with a brokerage firm. I think it's valuable.
Absolutely. Gary, I didn't know if you were going to chime in on that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's the educational aspect of it is something that I've thought about for many, many years. And I believe that the approach to it, the best approach would be really going back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the research aspect of the business. And I would basically start these students with an introductory class of doing research. I'd give them a specific make and model. I'd give them a database of everything that's transacted in the past 12, 18 months, whatever it took. And I would give them the key variables on that specific make and model. And I would have them call up the previous owner and the new owner and say, hey, I'm here with Purdue University, whatever university, and we're doing research in the name of education. Please tell us a little bit about your transaction. And you can find out one of the things that creates the value is that, you've got a database that shows you transaction values. And it's not like the real estate industry where there's a public record of this. So when you're doing research, trying to understand what are the true comps, you really have to rely upon, number one, your ability to get that information from the previous players in that transaction. And, there's disinformation that happens because that guy may have just sold that one, but he may have another one coming over the horizon, and he certainly wants to get more money for that one. So disinformation does happen in this industry. But I think when you've got somebody that's calling in the spirit of education and it's not somebody that has an agenda to try and buy or sell, I think that they could really extract some very, very good, accurate data, but at the same time, teaching these up and coming salespeople and these students, how you do the research the same way the professionals do. And then when you get, what we talked about earlier, go sweep the floor, go clean the hangar, whatever you have to take. Well, now all of a sudden you're coming out of school and you say, well, I took this course and I do understand the foundational approach towards doing the research. You really it could work. It very much could work. And I wish that we could get some universities on board. And I've talked to a couple of, veterans that, have 10 years tenure on me that, would probably be interested to go into sort of that type of role at this point in their life and go in and do one of these classes and do this mentorship. So I really think that it's the future. And I hope that we can, through GLADA and through our relationship with some of these universities and through our scholarship program, I hope that it is something that we can get incorporated over the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, well said. I would piggyback on that and use the analogy for me, I studied journalism, and in journalism, you learn a lot of fundamental things about writing and editing and things of that nature. But they're applicable. You can end up at a newspaper, a magazine, a TV station, a radio station, and now, of course, digital media. So if the fact that I had to say now, of course, means that tells you how long ago I went to school for this stuff. But the fundamentals were there. So, and I think you're saying the same thing in selling. There's fundamentals in terms of selling, research, the process, et cetera, and so forth, that can be learned in school. And then you branch out to figure out what direction you want to go and what level you want to take it to.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm thinking a couple things at once, which that means I'm multitasking, which no, I'm just kidding. Actually, what I wanted to do is go back to Mitch and Danielle and ask you guys, while we're talking about this, what your thoughts are for young people like yourself or younger, is what I was saying, that may be in school and are thinking right now, well, selling aircraft, that kind of sounds kind of cool. What would you advise them in terms of next steps and in preparing themselves for the possibility of this aspect of the industry?
So most people, when they want to get into aircraft sales, they start off as a researcher and market analyst. I think it's a great idea to start off in charter sales. It's a different approach of how to get into it, but most of the time you do need some sales experience. But I think it's a great way not only to learn a lot about aircraft, but it's a good stepping stone to get to aircraft sales.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. That's a great idea, because you are in charter. Usually companies charter a lot of different kinds of aircraft. So you do become familiar with them, familiar with the product, its capabilities, its missions, and things like that. So that actually makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. And it's probably one of the easier ways to enter the market in terms of something like that. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mitch?
I would say just find, immerse yourself into the industry, and then find what it is that you want to do. It's similar to like learning a foreign language. If you just put yourself in the entire industry, then you're going to learn real quickly as to what it is that you want to do, whether it be charter or sales or even one of the other industries like insurance or finance. Just keep an open mind into it as you go into it.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the whole thing, especially when you brought it up, Danielle, about, for example, charter sales, and going back to the different types of aircraft and the different sizes and different capabilities in terms of long and short range, et cetera, and so forth. Can any of you kind of open up on that in terms of letting people know how that affects what you touched on it earlier, Gary, but I thought maybe we could expand on a little bit about what you need to know and do in terms of connecting the buyer with the right aircraft for their needs.
Well,
research.
Yes. I mean, it's my approach is that I will first ask, what are your primary pairings? Where's your base? Where are you going to base the aircraft? Where do you see your primary destinations being? How many passengers do you see yourself carrying on a typical flight? And, they'll all start off with, 14 passengers, and it's not realistic. They don't normally load it up that full, but you really have to start by qualifying that. And then you have to know what the budget is. And then you can really deductively narrow it quite significantly at that point.
Mitch, you were saying something?
Oh, I just reiterated Gary's
research.
point. Research. You gotta do research for the client, for the aircraft, for the mission. Budget. It all just comes down to research so that you can make that puzzle happen.
So one of the things that I was thinking of earlier that I wanted to bring up about sales is that you also, so we'd all like to sell something and the first customer we offer it to buys it. Doesn't quite happen that way. Sometimes it takes a long time to cultivate a sale into a sale and things like that. In terms of dealing with that challenge and the fact that you may have a list of 100 prospects and you may only be able to close 15 of them or something like that. Can you guys touch on that again for our audience to kind of understand how that works in terms of this part of the industry?
I would say that the industry is a lot like when you're young and single and you're dating. You gotta kiss a lot of frogs before you find your
You did not
prince.
go there, Gary. Yes,
I
he did.
did. Gotta kiss a lot of frogs.
Okay. Danielle, Mitch, get me out of this. Help me, please.
Yeah.
I wish you said out of 100 deals, 15 will close, and I wish that was the case, but it's a complicated industry and it's not easy, and that's why it's not for everybody. You have to put in a lot of time, a lot of hard work, a lot of follow-ups, building relationships with your clients. But at the end of the day, you have to keep working, and eventually you will close. But
yeah, you're talking about perseverance and really hanging in.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you need a lot of perseverance to be in this industry.
Yeah.
It all goes back to data-driven decisions. People that can afford to be an aircraft owner, they make analytical decisions, and you have to be able to prove that you have the best deal. And that means not only knowing your product knowledge on your aircraft, but you have to know the product knowledge on the competitor's aircraft. And you've got that. The only way you're going to close this demographic of person is by having the data research. It's all the same thing. So you can't just rely upon the fact that he likes the design of the seats or the color of the wood. That does come in play, and it is a important variable. But in the end, you've got to know all the variables. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask all of you, and Gary, you already said that what really drives you in this industry is the closing of the deal. That's your big motivator. Christine, you've done a lot of different aspects of this. What's your driver?
I want to make sure, it sounds kind of corny, but it's true. I want to deliver the benefits to our members so that they're getting the connections that they're looking for, making new friends, and the networking is huge. And I want to be able to give them the benefits that help them do their job better, make it easier for them. I always listen to what our members are looking for. Feedback is huge. No matter what industry you're in, you have to listen, because you have to always constantly make improvements. And that's what I'm looking to do with GLADA, whether it's education or benefits such as the alerts that we offer to our members on everything from off-market aircraft to advice based on whatever channel it is in Slack. I always want to be able to do more. I will always build and make it better for them.
Mitch, how about you?
I really enjoy making customers happy and keeping things, at the end of the day, when the deal closes, I want to ensure that it was seamless and that they enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. Danielle?
I think everyone in sales is like this, but I touched on it a little bit earlier. You need perseverance. And when the hard work finally pays off, it's the best feeling.
That does it for you, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So the industry overall has really been blossoming in different ways lately in terms of growth. And I'm just talking about aviation and aerospace. There's just so much happening right now on both sides of it. On the space exploration side, there's all kinds of things going on, and they're taking people to the edge of the Earth's atmosphere and things like that, and plans to go to the moon and Mars. And on the aviation side, business aviation has grown exponentially and is seeing a lot of excitement. There's advanced air mobility that's slowly but surely coming into play and things like that. And I'll start with you, Christine and Gary. What's your take on the industry in terms of the opportunities that lie ahead for not only people like Danielle and Mitch, but other people that may be interested in, again, this aspect of the industry?
Yeah.
I would, I'm sorry, were you going to speak, Christine?
Nope, I said, Gary,
Okay.
you're up.
You know, I think one of the things that's important for people to understand is that, you know, owning your own aircraft is really one of the most powerful business tools in the corporate arsenal. And sometimes our industry gets a bad rap about, you know, people flying around in their private jets.
The optics.
The optics of it. You're exactly right. I remember a story where I was trying to sell an aircraft to a very prominent family in Europe, and the aircraft that I had was just brand new, custom, gorgeous airplane. It was sitting in Miami, and they just couldn't come to make the time to come see the airplane. And they said, hey, you know, look, there's this other aircraft that's going to be here in Farnborough tomorrow, and we just don't have the time to get to Florida. We're probably going to go with the other airplane. And I went to the aircraft owner and I told him, and he said, get your passport. He goes, I want you to be parked next to that airplane tomorrow morning. And I did. I rushed home, got my passport. We jumped in that airplane and we flew there, and we parked next to it in the morning. And when they showed up, they looked at both airplanes and we made the deal. And, you know, in this case, we're selling an airplane, but in life, it really doesn't matter if you're selling an airplane or you're selling a widget. It's about the power of a handshake. You know, I tell Danielle that a phone call is worth 50 emails, but a handshake is worth 1,000 phone calls. And we're in a generation where we've really lost that old school approach to sitting with somebody, looking them in the eye and shaking their hands. And I think that that's something we need to get back to. And I think that's something that really needs to be represented as one of the big values of the asset that we're selling.
I couldn't agree with you more about that. I think that the old school, as we tend to call it, is a fundamental, important part of selling and closing deals and establishing a very sound relationship, that eye to eye, face to face. You know, there's just something about that. And it's, speaking of using the aircraft as a tool, is why executives fly halfway around the world to solidify a relationship or close a deal or whatever the case may be, because of the importance of that. I always tell the story about how when video conferencing first came out in the mid 1980s, and everybody was like, oh my God, we're going to have video conferencing and no one's going to have to go anywhere anymore, and we're going to do everything via video. And I was like, yeah, right. And you know, we've watched that evolve, and even with the technology, particularly the technology that we have now, like we're doing on this call with Zoom, it still does not substitute for going and meeting with somebody in person and doing in person. Agreed. And doing the face-to-face. On the optics side of it, yeah, business aviation definitely gets a bad rap and continues to have to fight that on a lot of different levels, including corporations that use it and use it very effectively, but kind of have to downplay it because they just don't want to be, you know, picked up by the Wall Street Journal or some other publication or outlet saying, you know, that they're abusing the privilege, or that it's luxury this and luxury that and all of those kind of things, instead of the fact that it's a very effective business tool. And now with connectivity, you can have conference calls and meetings very easily on these flights and things like that. So Gary, really, really great point about that. How about you, Danielle and Mitch? You guys are on the young end of the spectrum. You're probably tired of hearing me say that, but I'm gonna say it anyhow. What's your take on that in terms of what Gary just shared with us?
I couldn't agree more. I think you need to get out and do face-to-face as much as possible.
Yeah. Danielle?
In terms of what he was saying with optics, at the end of the day, private air travel does not take up near as much as carbon emissions as people think. But on top of that,
good point.
a lot of people think it's like a crazy absurd number, but it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
But
less than the alternate airlines.
Yes.
Right.
On top of that, we always say time is money, and for these businesses having a way to quickly get to a meeting, especially if it's time critical, it's the most important part of the business. So
yeah. So, as we kind of wrap things up, Mitch, you and Danielle, again, are forging ahead with what you're doing. What do you guys see for your future, and what are some of your goals in terms of what you'd like to continue to accomplish from what you're doing now and going ahead?
Just continue making a mark in the industry so that, maybe a little bit later I'm sitting here saying I've been doing this for 30 years.
You like it that much, huh?
Well, we'll see, but right now, yeah. No, I just want to make an impact in the industry and continue building it better.
Yeah. If you were sitting here talking with some of your peers right now, that are like, hey, that's pretty cool what you do. And I know I'm going back on a little bit what I asked earlier, but I'll ask it again directly to you, Mitch. What would you say to them about what you're doing and why it's a great area to be in the industry?
I guess you just got to say that, selling assets is something that I really enjoy. I really, really enjoy putting people together, both a buyer and a seller. And so really what it boils down to is as long as you enjoy what you do, you're going to make a difference.
Yeah. Is there a competitive aspect of this at all? Like, since Dad does the same thing?
Well, yeah, because hopefully I'll kick him out here pretty soon. He's not going to like when he hears that, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but hey, you said it, so no, I'm just kidding. Danielle, how about you?
I think one of my favorite parts of the industry is the people, especially in GLADA, and it's just everybody is so personable and friendly, and because I am new to the industry, super willing to help answer questions. I would say that's my favorite part of the industry. But touching back on long-term goals, I think it would be awesome to see in my lifetime commercial space flight and incorporating some sales with that. I think would be awesome, and I hope to see it.
Did you hear that, Gary?
I did. I love it.
That's actually very cool. and it's coming. So you're thinking way ahead, but it's coming. It's not that far off too. It's just a few things we got to get together in terms of how we manage our airspace system and stuff like that, and our global, or whatever I'm trying to say, outer space system, I guess would be another way of putting it. So okay, I'm sticking my foot in my mouth, huh?
Didn't Elon Musk say by 2030 we'd have a moon base? I'm pretty sure he said that. If that actually happened, but.
Well, we're scheduled to be putting some stuff on the moon by 2025. So, we very well could do that. And between AI and the ability to, in robotics and things like that, I can actually see that happen. Christina, I'm coming back to you because you have such passion in terms of what you do and with GLADA and the future of GLADA. So tell us about that. Tell us again where you see GLADA going and how you see it being an essential part of the industry.
Sure. I love this industry. There's been times where I've been in it and thinking, what am I doing? Am I crazy? And, as a researcher, my natural role would have been to go into aircraft sales, but I liked the hunt. I liked digging and finding airplanes that nobody else knew about and hoping that we could get a deal done on them, regardless of who I worked for. I enjoyed that part of it. I was pretty creative on how I got my research done. I haven't learned a lot from JetNet. So aircraft sales kind of passed by. And when this opportunity came up, it was like, it just aligned. It was perfect. I like working with all the different people in the industry, all the different personalities. Some are a little easier to deal with than others. I think salespeople all around get a bad rap, but at the end of the day, everybody needs something. And the salesman is the one that introduces them to the product and helps them make the right choice. And I want to support that in this industry. And I love the people that I work with, and I will do whatever I can, like I said, to grow the organization and offer them the networking opportunities and the tools that they need to grow their business and their network.
Well said. So the last thing I like to do is I kind of do what I call an around the room and give everybody an opportunity to make one final statement about what they do, about their perspective on the industry. I'm going to start with you, Mitch. Any final words?
Just going back to it, just make sure that you love what you do and stay positive. Sales can be really tough. There can be a lot of downs, but you just gotta stay positive and understand that it's all going to be worth it.
Danielle?
I'd like to say to any of the younger viewers that are watching and they are interested in getting into aviation or aircraft sales to learn as much as they can. There's a lot of resources out there that are free. Christine mentioned books and things like that, but there's a lot of good YouTube videos about learning about different aircraft, things like that. Just learn as much as you can so that when you are getting ready to come into the industry, you're well prepared.
Christine, how do you get a hold of GLADA and find out more information about being a member and about what GLADA does?
Sure. You can go to our website, glada.aero, and my phone number's on there and my email, and you can reach out to myself or any one of our members. We have a active member directory that's available to the public, as well as our aircraft listings page.
Yeah. Gary, take us home.
I would say that a good barometer is if you drive faster to get to work than you do to get home, then you're doing something that you enjoy. My wife has accused me of that many times. So that's how I know I love this industry. If you really want to get into this industry, my advice is to specialize and take a fundamental approach. When I first started in this industry, somebody gave me a book called Over the Curb by Greg Hill. And it was about the basic steps of selling cars. And it looked like it was written for a 10-year-old. And I was like, well, we're not selling cars, we're selling airplanes. And he said, it doesn't matter. It's the same basic steps. So that's what I would suggest. Keep it simple and educate yourself.
Yeah, well, you've sold me, Gary, because you have an arch behind you and you're in St. Louis and you're from St. Louis and I'm from St. Louis. So, we could have just skip right to that and been fine.
Let's go Blues.
Go Blues, go Cardinal
year.
baseball. Yeah. Never mind. Anyhow, hey, listen, guys, thanks a lot for taking this opportunity to really share about your backgrounds and about GLADA, what it represents and what you guys are doing in the industry and this unique, I guess you could call it unique aspect of the industry. It's funny, Christine, you touched on it, and I was like, oh, we're out of time because I really would like to have gone there for a minute. But sales does get a bad rap. And it's unfortunate because sales is actually very intricate and there's a whole lot of aspects of it that most people may not realize that it takes to be effective with it. And a big part of it, of course, is the relationships and things like that. And something you had touched on earlier, Danielle, and the relationships, you're talking about persistence and perseverance. Sometimes you can be selling, you could have a prospect that you're dealing with for years before they finally pull the trigger, and that's just the nature of the business. And there's somebody else that you meet and a month later you've closed the deal with them. So there are a lot of variables in there, but it's been great to have you guys on board. Danielle and Mitch, I wish you guys absolutely the best in the pursuit of what you both are doing. Christine, love your passion, and Christine and Gary, I think it'd be great to see GLADA continue to grow, and I appreciate you guys being able to share about that. So again, it's glada.aero for anybody who wants to find out more information and things like that. So guys, it's been great to have you on, and thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you, Vince.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for watching and listening to All Things Aviation and Aerospace, a video webcast and audio podcast presentation of the Private Air Media Group, available to watch live and later on demand via my Private Air Media YouTube channel, Facebook Live page, and LinkedIn Live page, which we've been on during this show. The podcast audio version is available also on Spotify, Apple, or whichever podcast listening platform you choose to listen to your podcasts on. Next week, we will shift gears to advanced air mobility. You heard me talk about that a little bit earlier, as I will talk with the former acting FAA administrator, Billy Nolan. He is now with Archer Aviation out there in California, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what Archer is doing and what we can expect to see in this still new but rapidly developing aspect of the aviation industry. Until then, please take care, stay safe, safe flying, and if you're a pilot like yours truly, blue skies.